Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Dr. Ken Berry here, coming to you from the forests of Midwest Tennessee. I'm going to be hanging out with you over the next hour or so, and something's been weighing heavily on my mind and heart lately, and I wanted to go over some of this with you guys and share my thoughts on it and why I think what I think, and to ask you what you think as well. We're going to discuss some fairly controversial stuff in this video, and it's possible that the platform that I'm on may not appreciate that. And so I just wanted to let you know that all my videos are backed up on both rumble.com and odyssey.com, just in case the platform that we're currently streaming live on has a problem with the truth, and has a problem with logic, and has a problem with common sense. Then I'll see you over on Rumble or Odyssey. So right now is the time, if you haven't already done so, to click that share button, because we're going to be discussing some things that affect the health of every single human being on this planet. I see people watching from Australia, Denmark, San Diego, Alaska, Slovakia, everybody on this planet, regardless of genetics or heritage, is interested in a proper human diet and all the benefits that come from it. So my good friend Nina Teicholz, author of The Big Fat Surprise, had formed a organization called the Nutrition Coalition a few years back with the goals and the intention of changing the guidelines for nutrition that the federal government of the United States puts out. And the reason that's so important, we'll get into in a minute. But first, you need to know, regardless of where you live in the world, the USDA My Plate guidelines is probably what your country is using as well, regardless of where you are, what indigenous plants and animals grow in your country. Most countries copy and paste the USDA My Plate food guidelines for their society as well. I'm not sure why they do that, but they do. And initially, I was very excited about the Nutrition Coalition's goals and for their chances of success. But over the course of years, as I've watched this situation develop, it's become very obvious to me that we're on our own. You are on your own. No one is coming to save you. There's very little chance that the USDA guidelines are going to change within the next 10 to 15 years. So what we've got, at least in the United States, is a country that 50% of the adult population is either overweight or obese. Over half. We're getting close to 50% of the adult population has either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. Used to, fatty liver disease was always caused by alcohol abuse. Now the most common cause is highly processed, highly addictive, highly inflammatory, high carbohydrate diets full of lots of corn syrup and sugar and highly processed grains. So when a doctor sees someone with fatty liver nowadays, they're like, oh, you eat a junk diet, instead of, oh, you're an alcoholic. Virtually everyone on the liver transplant list in the United States is on the transplant list because of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. We have an epidemic of children with type 2 diabetes, children with obesity, children with fatty liver disease caused by the junk food that you can buy every day at your local supermarket, your local convenience store, your local gas station. It is literally an epidemic caused by the food that is marketed to you and sold to you by billion-dollar corporations who don't give a damn about your health. They don't give a damn about your child's health. That's not their mission, okay? A corporation, the way it's designed, all of the officers of that corporation, their one and only duty is to bring a profit to the shareholders. If a corporation, like let's say for instance, Kellogg, they got a new CEO, okay? And they said, you know what? We're sick and tired of causing children to have type 2 diabetes. We're sick and tired of causing children to just have a mouthful of cavities with all of our processed grain, sugar covered cereals. We're going to change all that. We're going to stop that immediately. We're going to start selling bacon and eggs that's the only breakfast we're going to sell. Now, you might think, well, yay, that's great. That's going to help a lot of kids. But no, it won't help any kids. And here's why. The shareholders would have a right in the courts to immediately sue Kellogg's, because the share price is going to go down because you can't make 1,000% markup on bacon and eggs. You can get healthy on it, but you can't make much profit on it. The shareholders could immediately sue Kellogg's, the board of directors, the CEO, and win immediately because that's a bad business model. So there is no corporation that's ever going to do that, ever. You may or may not know that about 10 different multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations basically control the food supply for you and your children. Okay, so there's 9 boards of directors, 9 or 10 CEOs that literally control the flow of food into your country. Not a single one of those 10 companies are ever going to say, hey, let's start selling a proper human diet, because their shareholders would sue them immediately and win. And the CEO would be fired and the board of directors would be replaced. And then the company would go back to selling profitable junk food. Well, you might say, what about the USDA? The Nutrition Coalition is trying to change their My Plate guidelines. So let's talk about the USDA. The USDA's initial mission decades ago was to get more nutrition in the mouths of Americans. That's what their primary motive was, because back in the 1910s and 20s and 30s, the average American was undernourished, was vitamin, mineral deficient. And so the USDA said, hey, we need to start teaching these people how to get some nutrition in their mouth so they don't, there's not a 6 foot tall guy that weighs 113 pounds, because that was the problem back then, was undernutrition, vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And so they started putting out information about all the different food groups and about how to cook beans properly so they don't poison you with the lectins and the phytates and the oxalates, how to cook corn properly to get the most calories out of it, to get the most. And so back then they thought nutrition meant just calories, right? And so if you eat a raw potato, you're not going to get much nutrition out of that at all. But if you cook it to death, then you wind up with a bunch of starch, which breaks down into glucose, which will give you energy. No doubt about that. It'll also contribute to inflammation and hyperinsulinemia and all the bad diseases I talked about earlier, but it will keep you from starving to death. And that was the danger back in the 1910s and 20s, was there were Americans who were starving to death and malnourished, undernourished. And so that's why the USDA started offering subsidies for all of these grain crops and oil crops like wheat, rice, oats, and corn, and oils like sunflower, safflower, canola oil. That's why they offer subsidies to farmers. That's why they started. So you would think that, starting in about the 1980s, when the obesity and type 2 diabetes epidemic started to take off, that they would say, maybe we should change our subsidies and start giving a lot more subsidy to pig farmers and cattle ranchers and broccoli farmers and asparagus farmers, because those are obviously healthier than wheat, rice, oats, and corn. Maybe we should start subsidizing beef tallow and bacon grease and butter, because they actually contain nutrition. They're not just fats. They actually contain a lot of nutrition and body building blocks. Maybe we should start subsidizing that. But so now you've got these big companies like Archer Daniels Midland and ConAgra and all these other billion-dollar agricultural companies who are basically cashing in on selling farmers one-time seeds, which means you have to buy the seeds every single year. You can't save seed back and plant it the next year. Most of the time, the seeds won't germinate true. And if they do, the corporation will come and sue you because you don't have a right to do that. I'm not kidding. So the USDA basically has a revolving door with Archer Daniels Midland, ConAgra, and all the other huge agricultural corporations. You work for USDA for a few years, then you get on the board of directors of ConAgra, or you get on the board of ADM, or you get on the board of whatever. So you know that if you do a good job, and when I say good job at the USDA, I mean you protect the corporation, the corporate interests, then you get rewarded because you don't make much working for the USDA. But when you move to your new job for the corporation, you just got a 10x raise. You got some stock options. You probably got all kinds of little cushy niceties. So the USDA is never going to change. That's never going to change ever because the USDA has been captured by the corporations. Now, what about the FDA? Maybe we could work on the FDA, and then they would come around and say, oh, gosh, you know, human beings for the last 3.5 million years have been eating mostly fatty meat, eggs, and some vegetables, some fruits, some berries. That's the proper human diet. Well, guess what? There are these corporations by the name of Kellogg's, Kraft Heinz, Mondelez, General Mills, who say they got the same deal with the FDA as the other corporations do with the USDA. And so the FDA, you may not know this, they get anywhere from 45 to 50% of their funding from the profits of the big food manufacturers and the big pharmaceutical manufacturers. So you work at the FDA for a few years. It's not a great salary. And then you get a promotion to the corporation, just like with the USDA, right? And so the FDA doesn't only have to contend with Kellogg's and Kraft Heinz and Mondelez and General Mills and Post. They also have to deal with Pfizer and Merck and Moderna. And so all of the pharmaceutical houses, they know that if people keep eating the food made by Kellogg's and made by Mondelez and Kraft Heinz, that they're going to keep being metabolically sick. And so Pfizer and Merck and Eli Lilly and Moderna, they know that if the FDA told people, look, just eat fatty meat and some veg and eggs and seafood, stop eating ground up wheat, rice, oats, and corn, stop eating vegetable seed oil, stop eating sugar, stop eating and drinking high fructose corn syrup. Immediately, Pfizer and Merck and Eli Lilly, they'd start to lose hundreds of millions of dollars because people would start to get healthier. So they're not interested in that. And so if an FDA got a new commissioner and he said, look, this is stupid what we're doing here, we're hurting people. I'm going to put out a guideline tomorrow saying you need to eat mostly meat, eggs, seafood, some veg, a few nuts, a few berries. That needs to be the entirety of your diet, and also for your children. You don't need to be buying all the shit from Gerber. You don't need to be buying all the little crunchy puffs for your infant and your toddler. That's bad for them. That gives them cavities. It gives them fatty liver. It makes them have prediabetes. It makes them fat. Immediately, all the lobbyists from Pfizer, Merck, Eli Lilly, Kellogg's, Kraft, Heinz, Mondelez, all of their lobbyists would immediately descend on the FDA and also descend on all the senators and congressmen in the U.S. federal government. And that guy would be fired within 2 weeks. He'd be out. And they would all apologize for that foolishness, and we would go right back to the way things are. Okay? So you can't hold your breath and wait for the USDA to fix my plate. It's going to be 20 years at least. You cannot wait for the Food and Drug Administration to say, hey, you won't have to take all these pharmaceuticals if you'll stop eating this shit food. That's never going to happen. That's 20, 30 years from now. So I mentioned congressmen and senators. Why don't a group of congressmen or a group of U.S. senators get together and say, hey, what the hell is this madness? It is now normal in the United States of America to be fat and metabolically sick. When did that happen, and why did that happen? You would think maybe a congressional committee might want to investigate that. Indeed, they have committees already formed that could investigate that. But they don't seem to have any interest in that. And here's why. Here's why you can't trust your congressman or your senator to do anything about making a proper human diet ubiquitous in the United States. The average congressman and the average senator has anywhere from 3 to 5 lobbyists who work for big food or big pharma, who do nothing all day, every day. They make 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 a year. The lobbyist does, to basically talk to the congressman and the senator and say, hey, this proper human diet stuff is foolishness. This is not good for the economy. If everybody started buying local meat and local vegetables, these huge corporations would go bankrupt. With the economy would be in danger. You can't support that. You can't even say the words out loud, proper human diet. And if a congressman was insistent and really wouldn't shut up about a proper human diet, or senator, and every time they got in front of the microphone, they were saying, hey, human beings have a specific diet that is best for their health. It wouldn't be long before the lobbyists would be talking to all the other senators and congressmen, and that senator or congressman would soon be brought up on trumped up charges that they had done something unethical, because they probably all have, because all senators and congressmen are people just like me and you. They're just dudes and chicks. So they probably got some skeletons if you dig deep enough. And when they start saying things that are directly in contradiction to the profits of billion-dollar corporations, guess what? The corporation is going to pay somebody to start digging for the skeletons. Even if the senator's exactly right. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. In this kind of environment, what matters is that you toe the party line. You take care of the corporations. Also, remember, congressmen have to run for office. They have to run for re-election every 2 years. And senators have to run for re-election every 6 years. So guess what? If you piss off all of the big corporations as a senator or a congressman, first of all, guess whose money you're not going to get in the form of donations? And they're the biggest donors. Currently, the way election law is set out, basically corporations can just buy elections. Not only is that senator or congressman not going to get any donations from the corporations, but they're going to start donating heavily to his opponent or her opponent. So that congressman or senator who was trying to change the world for the better is going to, in short order, get sent home with a loss. And they'll be back in the private sector. Now, the average senator and congressman, if they toe the corporate party line and they take care of their corporate buddies for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, 20 years, they can rest assured there'll be a sweetheart deal waiting for them. They'll get to be on a board of directors of some corporation, or they'll get to be a consultant for the corporation and make, $500,000, $1 million a year for basically, it's basically a payoff for the legislation that they passed while they were in office. So what congressman, if they really, because you can't really change the world as a congressman if you're no longer in Congress, right? And so congressmen and senators have to be very pragmatic about this. They're like, yeah, I want to try to do some good, but if they send my ass home, I'm not going to be able to do any good at all. So I've got to kind of choose my words wisely and carefully, kind of like I have to do on this streaming platform. And so they wind up not getting anything done to help the health of humanity. You guys hear Bonnie Blue? She wants to be on camera, I think. So you would think that academies, medical academies, nutrition academies, you'd think that one of them would step up, like the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. You would think they would step up, because these are bachelor level, master level, and doctorate level nutritionists and dietitians. You would think that they would know what a proper human diet was. And you think they would step up and say, hey, human beings are designed to eat fatty red meat, seafood, eggs, a little bit of veg, some nuts, and some berries. That's what we're designed to eat. Well, here's the problem with that. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics not only is sponsored by all the big food manufacturers to the tune of millions of dollars, they won't even disclose, even though they're a nonprofit. You'd think they'd have to file some kind of form with the federal government of all the donations. It's not public knowledge how many millions of dollars that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics gets every year from the big food corporations. Nobody knows for sure. It's going to take a whistleblower inside the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics before we'll ever know that information. Now, not only is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics funded by the big food companies and big pharma, of course, because if the A&D keeps saying, hey, eat lots of grains and lots of vegetable oils and lots of sugar and high fructose corn syrup, that's not bad for you. If the A&D keeps saying that, big pharma knows they're going to keep getting to sell billions of dollars of medications to people with chronic disease. But here's something you maybe didn't know about the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Did you know that not only are they funded by the big food companies, they're also invested in them? Yeah, their surplus money, they have actually invested in the stocks of Coca-Cola and PepsiCo and Mondelez. So not only are they funded by them, but they're invested in them. So if you've never bought a stock before, basically you buy shares or stocks in a company, and then you hope and pray that the company does really well. And you do everything in your power to help the company do well and profit. So the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics literally owns stock in Pepsi and Coke and Kellogg's. Yeah, not joking. You can look all this stuff up. Feel free to correct me in the comments if I say something incorrect, but I think all that's correct. Now, I don't know. We don't know exactly, but I don't think that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has a penny invested in any cattle ranches or sheep ranches or organic farms. It's like they're not interested in trying to spur that growth. They just want to invest in the big food manufacturers listed on the stock exchange that make lots of stuff out of ground up wheat, rice, oats, and corn, sugar, and vegetable seed oils. Every now and then you'll see a dietitian who bucks the trend, and like my friend Michelle Hearn, who says, this is bullshit. None of this is true, what you're saying. And she'll start to give people real nutrition advice, but that's just one lone voice in the wilderness. What about doctors? I mean, you understand that the obesity epidemic and the type 2 diabetes epidemic and the fatty liver epidemic, that's not just non-doctors who have that, right? That's actually doctors too. Because the average doctor is trained in the average medical school that is heavily funded by big food corporations and big pharma corporations. So that's where they get their training from. Now, the average doctor and dietitian, they're well-meaning. They try to be ethical. They try to do a good job. They try to help improve their patient's health. But first of all, if they don't know the truth, they can't tell the truth. Secondly, it's very possible for a doctor, ask me how I know, to get in trouble with their state medical board if they are too vehement about eating a proper human diet and using real things that actually improve your health and not just blindly prescribing pharmaceuticals. Doctors get in trouble for that kind of stuff every day. So you can't really depend on dietitians and doctors to give you the truth because, first of all, their license is in danger if they're too loud about it, too boisterous about it. Secondly, they don't know what they're talking about half the time. And I used to be one of those doctors. 15 years ago, I would have given you terrible nutrition advice. So now, how does all that matter? Well, I want you to think about every child who is in preschool, every child who's in elementary school, middle school, high school, or in college at a public university and eats the cafeteria meal plan. I want you to think about every single man and woman in the U.S. military, What you think about every man and woman in a U.S. prison, every man and woman in a U.S. hospital? If you added all those numbers up, that's a big percentage of the U.S. adult population and children as well. Did you know that every single one of those organizations, every hospital, every school, every prison, every arm of the military has to feed everyone under their care according to the MyPlate USDA guidelines? So the USDA and the FDA, who are literally owned by 20 or 30 different billion-dollar multinational corporations, forces every school, even the smallest school in your community, they have to follow the FDA guidelines, the USDA guidelines, or they will lose their federal funding. And the average small school can't afford to lose their federal funding. They'll have to close their doors. So every child in a public school, and many in private school, has to eat a diet based on ground up grains, wheat, rice, oats, and corn, high fructose corn syrup, fruit juice, skim milk, and Coke and Pepsi. That's what they have to feed them, or they will get in trouble with the federal government. So here's my message to you. I very often on Twitter, if I see a compelling thing, I will tweet it to my Tennessee congressman and my Tennessee senators, and like, hey, you need to look at this. You need to realize this. But do I expect anything to change because I tweeted my congressman or senator? No. I do want them to be aware, so when the time comes, they can't say, well, I didn't know. Yeah, you did know. That's not going to change anything. The USDA, the FDA, they're not coming to save you. You are on your own when it comes to eating a proper human diet. Your congressmen, your senators, they are not going to save you. They are not going to ban junk food. They are not going to tax junk food. They are not going to subsidize real human food. Wonder what would happen to the health of Americans if the USDA started subsidizing beef and full-fat dairy and sheep and goats and real vegetables like brassicas, like broccoli, garlic, onion, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, peppers. Wonder what would happen if they stopped all subsidies. You know, they still subsidize tobacco. Even to this very day, the U.S. federal government still subsidizes tobacco to some degree. Did you know that? They subsidize sugar beets. They subsidize cane sugar. They subsidize canola oil production. They subsidize wheat, rice, oats, corn, all the grains that you make the junk food out of. So effectively, the big food manufacturers get their raw ingredients to make their junk food for 90% cheaper than it should be because it's subsidized. Then they get to mark it up, make a 500%, 1,000% markup on it, sell it, and then a very large percentage of what they sell in the supermarket is bought by people who are on federal benefits, like the EBT, SNAP benefits. So if you got a SNAP card, you're going to buy whatever fills up your tummy and makes your kids happy. You don't have a degree in nutrition or dietetics. You don't know. You're not a doctor. You just know your kids love Cheetos and Pepsi Cola and Lucky Charms. Your kids love that stuff, and you got this card from the federal government to help you buy food. So you're going to do that. Big Food knows that. The majority of SNAP benefits, like 10% of the money is spent on Coke and Pepsi and Dr. Pepper and Mountain Dew. Yeah, like that's the biggest expense that people with a SNAP card benefits. They spend most of that on soft drinks. That you can't change that. Okay. The USDA and the FDA, Congress and the Senate the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the American Medical Association, the American Diabetes Association, the American Heart Association. All of these entities are captured by corporate money. They are captured. They know if they start saying the things that I'm saying, which many of them know is true, but they know that if they say this stuff out loud, they will not have a cushy corporate job waiting on them. They will not have a board seat waiting on them. And they will also be run out of the industry. Nobody else will hire them. They know that. So what are we to do? What are we to do? And if you've been watching me for a while, you know what I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to say it again because I bet some of your friends who may be watching don't know. So the USDA is not coming to save you. You're on your own. The FDA is not coming to save you. Okay. If you're in a school or a hospital or in the military or in a prison, you're screwed. Nobody's coming to save you. You are going to eat a high carb, high sugar, highly inflammatory diet filled with wheat, rice, oats, corn, canola oil, soybean oil, high fructose corn syrup, and sugar. You're going to eat that or you'll starve to death. You have no choice. So what are we to do? A few years back, I decided that we're not going to change any of this that I've just been talking about. If you're just joining now, you need to go back and watch this entire video because some of the things I say earlier in this video are quite inflammatory. And I don't expect to be offered the position of Surgeon General anytime soon. And that's okay. Because I feel like I can do more good sitting right here in front of my desk in Holiday, Tennessee than I could as Surgeon General. Because if I was offered that, if the next president, if Donald Trump and RFK got on the same ticket and ran together and they won, think about that. And they reached out to me and said, Dr. Berry, we want you to be Surgeon General. That'd be tempting with that duo. But I'd probably turn it down because the federal government is completely and totally captured by the big corporations. They can't do good even if they want to. Because if they do good, a corporation's profits will suffer and then heads will roll. Congressmen will be voted out of office. People working for the USDA and FDA will lose their job or lose their funding, which is effectively the same thing. Everybody will get clipped. Because when you make $10 million a minute as a corporation, you can pretty much buy anything you want. Look at the average news channel or the average evening news on your local channel. The next time your evening news comes on your local channel, I want you to actually watch it because you're not going to learn anything from it, but I want you to watch it and I want you to count how many of the commercials there are total, and then how many are big food commercials and how many are big pharma commercials. And you'll quickly understand, the news, I'm talking about Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC, they're all completely funded by big food and big pharma. And so if somebody on one of the main networks said, look, you need to eat a proper human diet. You need to stop buying anything from Kellogg's. There's nothing that Mondelez makes that's good for you. They would be fired within a few days because the big ad executives from Big Food and Big Pharma would call the program manager and say, hey, if that guy's not off the air within 10 minutes, we're going to pull our $20 million a month ad budget. So if you were the program manager of that station and you were eating a proper human diet yourself and benefiting, your family was eating a proper human diet, and you knew that reporter was saying the truth, but you were about to lose 30%, 40%, 50% of your ad revenue literally overnight. What would you do? You would have to fire that reporter who was saying the literal helpful truth. Nobody's coming to save you. You are alone in this. Now, we have our ketovore, carnivore, low carb proper human diet communities, huzzah, huzzah. We have those, but it's a very small ragtag community. Here comes a member right now. Hi, Becky Berry. You want to tell the people anything? One of these days, he's going to not be silly. He's going to say something smart. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Pizza.
Right. All right, go play, buddy. Let me talk to my people. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Say love you, mean it.
Wait a minute.
That's one of the reasons I do what I do. That's one of the reasons I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Because all you guys have a Beckett. May not be your son, maybe your grandson, maybe your nephew, maybe the kid next door that you're really fond of. We all have a Beckett. We all have a Bonnie Blue. We all have kids that we love. We all have people, family, friends, neighbors that we love. And we can't depend on any of these organizations to come and save us. We can't depend on any of these organizations to hold a press conference that's covered by all the major news outlets and says, hey, we've been wrong since 1977. You should not eat lots of wheat, rice, oats, and corn. You should not drink high fructose corn syrup. You should not drink fruit juice. You should not eat sugar with every bite of every meal. You shouldn't do that. You should eat lots of fatty meat, lots of seafood, lots of eggs with the yolk, lots of full fat dairy, butter. You should eat some real nuts, eat some real berries, eat some real veg, unprocessed. Nobody's coming to say that. And so if any of your friends watch television, they watch YouTube, they read magazines, they're going to get a false message of what being healthy is, of what healthy food actually is. Come here to me, girl. Come here to me. Hi. Can you say hi?
Hi.
This is Bonnie Blue. She's going to be a year old on the 11th in 2 days. Oh. Exactly. I've been trying to tell everybody. Right. 11 months and 29 days old. I don't know where she gets that. Huzzah! That's right. This is why I do what I do right here. Because I don't want this girl to grow up and have type 2 diabetes or fatty liver. I don't want her to grow up and have to suffer from the pain, the joint pain of being obese. I want her to be happy and healthy and mentally healthy and physically healthy. Go play with your mom.
Like she wants electrolytes.
Oh, you want your electrolytes? Okay. She just learned how to use a straw. We're very proud.
Enough. It's enough.
Bye-bye, Bonnie Blue. Yeah, Bonnie Blue could be a good preacher. Did you guys see that? That was good form, good technique, good diction, her timing. She had it all. Had the hand gesture. So what are we going to do? How are we going to save Beckett and Bonnie Blue? How are we going to save every kid we know and love? Well, and so this is my strategy, and I would advise you to adopt this strategy. The first thing you need to do is fix your own shit. If you've got type 2 diabetes, reverse it. If you're obese, fix it. If you got fatty liver, reverse it. If you got hypertension, improve it. How do you do that? You do that by eating a proper human diet. And once you have fixed your own shit, and that's step one. Step two is then you lead by quiet example. And you do that by fixing your own shit. Okay? When somebody who hasn't seen you in 6 months, when they see you and they see how happy you are and they see how healthy you are and they see that, wow, man, he must have had to buy new clothes. He looks so much better. Used to, this button right over his belly button was in danger of popping. Now this button right over his pecs, that's the one that's about to pop. How'd that happen? He adopted a proper human diet. That's how he did it. People are interested. They're intrigued. They're curious. When they see somebody's health improving, they want to know what's going on. How'd you do that? Hey, what have you been doing? So you fix your own, and then you lead by quiet example, and you wait for somebody to ask, and then you teach them. You share the message. You can share this video. You can share any of my videos anywhere on social media. If each time you just think about it, if each time you share one of my videos, it helped turn around the life of one person who was suffering and sick, or it helped educate a young parent who didn't know all this stuff, and therefore a little kid like Beckett or Bonnie Blue never had to suffer from metabolic disease just because you hit the share button. How cool would that be? So after you fixed yourself, then you're going to start gently, lovingly, diplomatically working on your family, because they're going to be curious when you get healthy. How did you do that? You're going to teach them, and you're going to help them, and you're going to support them as they start to eat the proper human diet. What about your friends? You got any friends who are obviously metabolically unhealthy? I bet you do. Once they see your improvement, they're going to want to know what you're doing, and you're going to gently, lovingly, respectfully teach them how to eat a proper human diet. You're going to point them to resources. Oh, here's some videos by Dr. Ben Bickman. Here's some videos by Dr. Paul Mason. Here's some videos by Dr. Jason Fung. Here's some videos by Dr. Ken Berry. Watch these videos. They're going to teach you more about human physiology, biology, and nutrition than you ever learned, even if you got a college degree in biology. Then you're going to start working on your neighbors, because you know your next door neighbor, when you go out to get the mail or pick up the paper, they see you. And if you look completely different than you did 6 months ago, they're going to be intrigued. They're going to be curious. And you're going to be happy to share with them what you did. Also, I don't want you to be shy with your doctor. I want you to tell your doctor, hey, doc, I'm going to try this keto diet. I'm going to try this ketovore diet. I'm going to try this carnivore diet. I'm going to try eating a proper human diet. And I want you to monitor me and monitor my labs. Monitor my BMI, monitor my waist to height ratio to see if it's having a positive effect on my health or a negative effect. I don't want you to be shy. I don't want you to mislead your doctor. I want you to tell them what you're doing, because what is a doctor going to say when they've seen 100 people come into their office, fat, type 2 diabetic, fatty liver, hypertension, and then that person says, you know, I've been hearing about this proper human diet. I'm going to adopt that, and I'm going to see what it does to my health. And then that doctor sees you 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later. After that doctor's seen 50, 100, 200 patients do that, what do you think that doctor's going to do? They're going to look into it, and they're going to adopt a proper human diet. And for the rest of their career, they're going to teach every single one of the patients they come into contact with, you need to ignore the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. You need to ignore the American Diabetic Association. You need to ignore the American Heart Association. You need to eat a proper human diet. When they come to your kid's school and talk about the USDA MyPlate, you tell your kids to nod and smile and be polite and ignore that shit. And you will pack your children a lunch of fatty meat and eggs with the yolk and a few low-carb veg and a few nuts and a few berries. And that's what they'll take to lunch, because you're trying to grow a beautiful human brain and a beautiful human body and a beautiful human personality. And you cannot grow those things by feeding them a shit diet. Now, here's one final thing that I just thought of today. And I want to encourage all of you guys who have the means, the financial means to do so. I want to encourage you to adopt a kid. I don't mean literally adopt them, although you could if that's what you wanted to do, because then you would be in charge of their diet. I mean to adopt a grandchild, adopt a niece or nephew, adopt that cute kid next door that you love, but you know their parents are busy and poor, They don't know anything about nutrition. Adopt that kid. Take them under your wing. And tell the parents, look, I know you guys are you're on the razor's edge financially. I know that. I'm doing well for whatever reason. I want to help you guys out. Would you mind if I just bought food for your little one or for your little ones? I don't expect anything in return. Just let me buy food for them. Right? Do you have a local food pantry? Don't take them Hi-Ho crackers and Goldfish crackers and graham crackers. Don't take them that shit. Take them canned salmon, canned tuna, canned sardines. Take them real food, canned beef, canned ham. Take them real food. You imagine right now if you were homeless, what you have to eat. You go to the food pantry. Oh, okay, I'll have some Hi-Ho crackers and some graham crackers and a 3-liter bottle of Pepsi. Do you think, is there any nutrition in that that's going to feed my mind as a homeless person, that's going to help me get off the streets, that's going to make me a little smarter, that's going to make me a little sharper, that's going to make me a little more focused? Is there anything in that food that's going to help my brain at all? No. Think about our prisons, the men and women in prison right now. Yeah, they messed up. They're in prison. But don't you hope, because I hope that everybody in prison is like, man, I really screwed up. I got to get my shit together. I got to start learning. I got to start reading books. I got to get out of here and never F up again. That's what I would hope is going on. And so for those people, I'm sure some of them are saying that, maybe not all, but some are saying, I got to start reading books. I got to start taking online courses. I got to learn. Okay. And then they go to the mess hall. Here's some high carb, highly processed, sugar-filled slop. And then here's some slop to go on your slop. And then here's some slop. And then here's some orange juice or a Coke to wash it down with. Is there anything in there? Anything in those meals, those three square meals a day that they're getting in prison that's going to help them be sharper, that's going to help them be more focused, more alert, that's going to help their mental health instead of hurt their mental health? No, nothing. Okay, so adopt a kid, adopt a food pantry. If you worship and you go to church and you guys have after church get-togethers, dinners, socials, take real food and don't be shy about it. Take real food that's made out of actual, real, proper human diet food. And tell people, hey, this is, if you want some actual real nutrition, it's over here. Nobody's coming to save us, folks. You've got to find your own tribe. You've got to find a buddy to do keto or carnivore with. You've got to join a private community. You've got to find your tribe on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. The powers that be are not coming. They're not going to help us. They're only going to hurt us because they're captured. They are literally enslaved by the big food and big pharma companies. The billion-dollar corporations own your government. And maybe to some people this sounds conspiratorial. But I don't think it's really conspiratorial when we have literal paper trails of the revolving door between the federal government and big food and big pharma corporations. I don't think that's conspiratorial. A conspiracy theory implies that you don't have any facts or any proof. You're just blowing off your mouth. But we have evidence of all this stuff happening. We have evidence of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics not only being bought off and funded by big food and big pharma, but also investing their investment dollars in big food stocks and big pharma stocks. Literally, that's what they want, the big food stocks to do well so they can make a profit. The American Diabetes Association has been captured. Trust me, I've embarrassed them enough times on Twitter that if they were not a servant of big pharma and big food corporations, they would have changed their ways by now. Their hands are tied. Everybody would be fired if the American Diabetes Association tomorrow held a press conference and said, look, if you're pre-diabetic, type 1 diabetic, type 2 diabetic, you do not follow any nutrition advice we've given you in the last 20 years. You need to go to Dr. Berry's YouTube channel and eat the food that he tells you to eat if you'd like to reverse prediabetes or reverse type 2 diabetes. Or if you have type 1 diabetes, if you'd like to have a normal hemoglobin A1C and not lose your legs and your eyes and your potency and wind up on dialysis, eat the food Dr. Berry tells you to eat. But you're never, ever going to hear them say that because they are a literal servant, a captured servant to big food and big pharma. Help yourself, fix yourself, help your family, fix your family, help your friends, fix your friends, help your neighbors, fix your neighbor's health. Teach your doctor about a proper human diet. Let them watch your triglycerides go from 800 to 400 to 200 to 100 to 65. Let your doctor see your triglycerides do that. Let your doctor see your hemoglobin A1C go from 12 to 8 to 7 to 5.6 and beyond. When a doctor sees that happen over and over and over in a community, they're not dumb. They're not blind. They see that. And they, at some point, they cannot no longer ignore that. And they will start to teach their other patients. Your family is going to start to teach their extended family. Your friends, after you've taught them, they're going to start teaching their friends. Your neighbors, after you've taught them, are going to start teaching their next door neighbors. And then I want you to think about adopting a kid or adopting a food pantry and providing real human food for that kid or that family or that food pantry, whatever you decide. You can do it anonymously. Drop it off. Every Monday morning they walk out and there's $100 worth of real food sitting in the grocery bags in front of their front door. They're like, what the hell? Where'd that come from? You don't ever have to tell them. Or you can establish a relationship with them. And like I said earlier, say, hey, I want to help you guys out. I know you're going through a rough time. Start dropping off real food at the food bank so that homeless people down on their luck, people who are in the very lowest levels of the socioeconomic status have a chance to feed their brains and have a chance to feed their children actual, real, meaningful, nutrient-dense, ancestrally appropriate human food. That's how we're going to change the world, is one person at a time, just like that, because nobody's coming to help us. Nobody's coming to save us. We have to do this on our own. And I'm willing. I'm game. What about you? Are you willing? Are you ready? Are you fired up about this? Or does it sound like too much effort? Blessing boxes. Celtic fiddle. Yeah. A blessing box could just show up on somebody's front door. It's got a couple of young kids that are right now currently, you know what the young kids are living on? Lucky Charms and chocolate milk and Doritos. Because the parents don't know, they don't know better. They grew up in an education system being fed shit food that inflamed their body and brains, that didn't help their brain develop its maximum potential. You have to have pity on them. Don't judge them. They don't know any better. Maybe when you were a young parent, you didn't know better either, because I know myself as a young parent, I sure as hell didn't know better. But now I do. And when you know better, then you've got an opportunity to do better and to make the world better. If you like messages like this, you might enjoy being a part of our private community. There's a link down in the show notes. We've got thousands of people who have joined us who are on a mission, just like me, to change the health of our entire planet. Every person of every skin color, of every gender, who speaks whatever language, I don't give a damn about any of that. If they are a human being, I want them to have an opportunity to realize their optimum health. It should be the birthright of every human to eat a proper human diet and to reap the benefits that come from such a diet. And I appreciate your help in helping to spread this message, because this is not my message. This is a message for all of humanity. If you eat the wrong foods, you will get fat and diabetic and sick. You will have increased levels of mental illness and physical illness. If you eat a proper human diet, your inflammation will improve. Your metabolic markers will improve. Your mental health will improve. And then you'll be a better human. And then that can ripple through all of society. All of us can do this on one level. If you're only able to buy 1 can of sardines a week and leave it on your neighbor's doorstep, they might think that's weird. Whatever. They can give it to the cat. At least the cat's eating a proper cat diet now. But I would encourage you to adopt a kid, adopt a family, adopt a food pantry, and start giving them real human food that's going to actually improve their health and help maximize their IQ and maximize their mental health, maximize their muscle strength, help them be the best human they can be. We Are Thriving says, hi, Granny Berry. I don't know if Granny Berry's watching this one or not. She may be out in the garden working. She's 93 and she's out in the garden every day. So that's it, guys. That's what I've got. I hope this wasn't too boring. I hope you feel like this is share worthy on your social media. And I hope that this makes you curious. Just how much could we change the world? How much could we improve our neighborhood? How much can we improve our city, our county? Just by making an effort, showing up, showing our results, leading by example, and helping our friends and family. How much difference could you make? Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter how young you are. Just think about it. Think about it. And then after you've thought about it, do something about it. Also, Nisha's got a new video on her channel. You need to check it out. Beckett and Bonnie are beyond super cute, and Nisha, as always, is glamorously beautiful. This is Dr. Berry. Thank you so much for your patience and listening, and thanks for sharing this. I'll see you next time.